Hi, I am so excited to be here today. So my name is Lisa, and I'm a product manager at Google working on the AMP project. And I know you got a little bit of an intro to what AMP was, but it's a framework for building fast and mobile-friendly pages. And today I'm going to talk a bit more about what AMP is and the journey that we've been on in building it, and particularly how we're thinking about e-commerce, which we really believe to be the next big frontier for AMP. And I want to start with a prediction that Forbes made this year, that in 2017, half of all e-commerce revenue in the US will come from mobile. And this is huge because it means that in our mobile-first world, having a mobile-friendly experience is critical to remaining competitive. And we can see this every day, that users demand and they reward performance. 53% of mobile site visitors will leave a page if it takes more than 3 seconds to load. 79% of shoppers will not return to a site that was poor performing to purchase again. And a 1-second delay in load time can lead to a 7% decrease in your conversion rate. And when we look at the mobile landscape today, we can see that mobile sites don't meet these demands. Over 75% of sites take over 10 seconds to load on a 3G network. And I'm sure that you've experienced this when you're trying to browse on a page and it's taking forever to load, and when it does load, things are moving around so you can't browse effectively, or buttons are taking multiple taps just to respond. Sometimes the page just completely times out and you have no idea what's going on. Now, we also know that maintaining and building a mobile-friendly site is a lot of work. It doesn't come cheaply, it certainly doesn't come free, and it requires constant updating. And so that's really why we started the AMP project. We wanted to make it really easy for developers to build fast and mobile-friendly experiences, and we thought we could offer a really great solution in the form of a technology framework. And so to back up a little bit and give you some context on why this mattered to us and why we started it more, we kicked off AMP development in the latter part of 2015, and we started launching AMP-enabled experiences in 2016. And we started with the news vertical, which was great because it gave us a solid core use case to focus on, making it easy for publishers to build beautiful, mobile-friendly content pages. And with that, we launched in a feature that was already targeted towards publishing and fresh content, the Top Stories carousel here. And if you look at this carousel, you can see that we had already been thinking about ways to make the search experience more engaging and more user-friendly. Instead of just a blue link, we have images, we have the publisher logo, and it's easy to browse between them. So with AMP, what we did was we took this experience and we upgraded it. So when you tap on any one of these articles, it would load instantly. And after tapping, you'd be able to swipe between the different articles and easily browse content from different publishers. So I hope this provides some context on why this matters to Google, because of course we care about making the user experience better, but even more than that, it provides us a way to innovate on the search experience. So never before could you have a page load so quickly after tapping on it, and never before could you swipe between different articles directly from the search results page. Our next big launch was in 2016 when we allowed blue links to point directly to AMP pages as well. And this expanded the different verticals that could take advantage of AMP, from just publishing to knowledge sites or recipe sites and even e-commerce sites. And since we've launched, we've seen that the format continues to grow, with billions of pages being created by millions of different domains. But what does this mean for e-commerce, right? So why should you guys care? Well, when you build your pages with AMP, you're able to bring instantaneous loading to your users while maintaining your branding and your customized pages. So it's not about templating and it's not about sticking your content into predetermined places. It's really about a fast framework that lets you create pages and maintain all of the customized styling that you have. And in addition, different platforms link out to AMP pages. So Google, of course, is one, but Bing, Twitter, Pinterest, and LinkedIn also all link out to AMP pages, because we really believe that the web is one of the best mechanisms for discovery and distribution, and so we want to supercharge that experience so that it's not just easy for your users to search for something, but it's super fast and easy to get that content once they found it. And to give you an idea of how fast an AMP page is, on the left we have an AMP page and on the right we have a non-AMP page. The AMP page is loaded in around 4 seconds, whereas the non-AMP page is still loading, the image is still being fetched. It's going to take about 28 seconds to completely load this page and get the fonts, get the content that they want here. And that's just a poor user experience. Your user's there just waiting to see what this product even is. And so we're continuing to innovate on the different ways that we can link to AMP pages. So the experiment that you just saw is actually something we're running to point product pages to AMP pages, or products to AMP pages. And the thinking there is that if we can get that product in front of your user more quickly, they stay engaged and they're more likely to convert. And similarly, we just recently launched the feature where ads will link out to AMP pages with the similar thinking that getting that content in front of your user more quickly will keep them engaged and help them convert. So when we think about all of these different distribution platforms and the speed benefits that AMP brings, the value proposition of AMP for e-commerce becomes really clear because all of these product landing pages and promotional pages and category pages, they're all indexed by search engines and they're shared on social media. So to take advantage of the speed that AMP brings can be huge for them. And to give you an idea of what increasing speed time means for revenue, AliExpress noted that when they reduced load time by 36%, they found a 10.5% increase in orders and a 27% increase in conversion rates. So this isn't just a few more users staying around to click around on your pages, this is translating into real revenue in the form of millions of dollars for them. FastCommerce, which is an e-commerce platform in Brazil, they published 2 million AMP pages, and they were able to see a 2.5 times improvement in page speed and a 15% increase in conversion rates. Again, translating into real revenue for their sites. Want Mobile is a platform that dynamically renders AMP pages when they know that the user is on a mobile device. And when they compared their AMP and their non-AMP pages, they saw a 105% increase in conversion rates, a 31% decrease in bounce rates, and a 29% increase in CTR from search. Again, resulting in real revenue for these sites. So I hope I've been able to convey a bit about why the mobile experience is so important for your users, and I want to spend some time talking about what exactly AMP is. So from a technical standpoint, AMP is built on 3 core components, the first being AMP HTML, which is basically just regular HTML, but with a few caveats to keep it safe and secure. AMP JavaScript implements all of our best performance practices and does things like manage resource loading so that those pages are rendering as quickly as you see them. And caching is the third part of this. So caching has become really important in general in the world of content serving, and it happens at almost every layer of the network stack. So when we were building AMP, we wanted to take advantage of this tool to make sure we could deliver pages to the user really quickly. And on Google, we baked it right into AMP. And so all of our pages are served from the AMP cache, which fetches and caches these AMP pages and also validates them to make sure that they are as performant and as safe as we expect, and we can provide the user with a great experience. Now I want to note that just because these pages are cached does not mean that they're stale. So we operate on a one behind model, which means the first time a user ever requests your page, if we don't know about it, we cache it. For subsequent users, each time they fetch that page, we serve them what's in the cache and then we refresh what we have stored. So for pages that are being frequently accessed, this cache is essentially invisible. Your users won't even notice it. Now we know as an e-commerce site, there are probably certain things that you want to make sure are as fresh as possible. So for example, price or availability. And we provide ways for you to dynamically fetch that content so that you don't take any risks with potential staleness. One last thing I want to note is that AMP doesn't require an entirely new development team. It builds on existing skill sets because an AMP page is essentially a web page. And you also get to take advantage of all of the updates that the core AMP team builds. So we're constantly iterating to make sure that the format is as fast and as performant as possible, and you will automatically get those updates. So to put this in a more visual expression, we can think of this as a race where each car is a mobile site. So your average mobile site is operating somewhere in the back of the pack for all of the performance reasons that we talked about earlier. And we know that it's possible to get to the front of the pack. You can hand tune your site, you can spend a lot of time making the different design decisions that will decrease your load time. But we also know that not all sites have the resources to do this. And furthermore, not all sites want to do this. As an e-commerce site, you likely want to spend more time focusing on the products that you're building for your users rather than tinkering with the speed of your pages. And finally, we know that the secrets to making a well-performing and fast site they're not actually that secret. They're all pretty well accessible. It's just a matter of having the resources to implement them. So wouldn't it be great if someone could just create one solution and solve it for everyone? And that's what we're trying to do with AMP. is that we want to take your average mobile site and bring it to the front of the pack. We know that we can't beat a hand-tuned site. We can't beat the developers that are spending hours and hours tinkering with their own site to make it faster. We have to accommodate a wide variance of different types of sites. But what we can do is bring it closer to the front and make it significantly better than your average mobile site, which is really the goal here. And the best part about AMP is that it's not best case AMP, this is average AMP. And so we're able to take all of the pages that integrate AMP and bring them to the front of the pack and really level the playing field for these sites. I want to note one more thing, which is that you cannot write arbitrary JavaScript in AMP. You can use sandbox iframes, but in general, you can't just start writing JS. And yet, if you recall, I noted that a core component of AMP is JavaScript. And for any AMP page that you create, you need to include this script tag in order to get the functionality you would expect on a web page. And what this really boils down to is two parts, our core framework and our web components library. So why do we need a core framework? Well, if you take a look at this example of actual network traffic that I pulled, you can see there's about 500 requests happening here. Quite a lot of them are for scripts, which are super heavy and clunky. And in addition, there's a lot of redundancy here. So there are multiple analytics tags that are all tracking the same things and not talking to each other. They're probably all tracking something like interactions on the page or time to scroll. And what this leads to is an uncoordinated free-for-all. It's kind of like a pack of untrained puppies. Like they're super cute, but they can also just wreak havoc and pee everywhere and create a mess. And what we really want is more coordination. So it's not about what we're stripping from the page, it's about making these elements work really well together. We want a sense of prioritization. So for example, things above the fold should load before things below the fold. And the other part of this is our web components library, which has all of the components that allows you to get the functionality you would want on a web page. So for example, AMP add lets you use display ads, and AMP accordion functions as an expander that you can use to create menus. And we have a whole host of other features like videos and social embeds. You can also take advantage of the 40+ different vendors who have created integrations with AMP. So for example, for when you're using analytics, you can use integrations built by Omniture or Google Analytics so that you don't have to change how you're measuring things. You basically just take your existing solution and port it over to AMP. And I want to emphasize that AMP is a platform. So for any integrations that you don't currently see, they can be built and they can be pushed to the repository and made public to the ecosystem. And for example, if there are features or components like AMP Lightbox that are missing functionalities that you want, you can build those on top of our library and push those as well to the public. And our ecosystem is really growing, and we're trying to foster a community of developers who care about the mobile experience. As I mentioned, we have over 40 different analytics and embed integrations, and we have over 400 different code contributors to the site, to the repository. So with all of this, it may still seem like your pages have to be super templated and they're not easily customizable, but that's not true because we support CSS with AMP. So you can get that branding and styling that you want. As you can see with these examples, Airbnb and eBay and Mintra and Portero, they're able to make their sites look how a user would expect, and they're able to keep that branding that they want. So to dive a little bit more into the different experiences that can be supported in AMP, we can start with a product browse page. So here you can build out navigation with the sidebar menu to easily help your users get to the important parts of your page. You can also build out search in the header or anywhere else on the page in order to, again, help your users find information quickly. And you can implement server-side filtering and sorting so that you can let your users either maybe just filter all of the content so they only see women's clothing here in this example, or filter or sort the price so that it's from low to high or high to low. And on the product details page, I mentioned earlier that you can dynamically fetch some content. So for example, for price or for availability, or maybe you want a personalized recommended products carousel. You can do all of this by just specifying a JSON endpoint, and we'll make that server call at load time so that you can dynamically get fresh data. We also support product option selection, so all of the basics of letting your user specify the color or the size or whatever attribute of the products that you're selling in order to get what they want. And you can update this page based on what they're selecting, so it's interactive. For example, if this green bicycle is more expensive than the white bicycle, you can update the price or update the availability as needed when they're interacting with the page. And I don't want to forget about all of the other features surrounding a product. So for example, the description or the specifications or the sizing information. You can organize all of this using tabs. And so as a user, I don't have to scroll like 15 times just to get to important content at the bottom. It's easily accessible for me. You can also implement things like sharing or reviews and star ratings or images and videos to highlight what your products look like so that your users get all of the information that they need quickly to make that decision. For carts and checkout, you can implement payments through the Payment Request API. Again, a quick way to do this is allowing your users to save their credit card information and easily access it. You can also use an iframe to just bring in your existing payment flow. You can build wish lists or cart pages and have adding, editing, removing functionality as you would expect on these pages. And for the actual checkout process, you can use AMP forms. And with forms, you can do all of the basics that you would expect. So there's custom validation, for example, if there are certain fields that are required, or something a little more complicated. For example, if the user is using an email that's already registered with you, you can figure that out and let them know so they don't register again. But there's more to this. So this is really where AMP brings value, is that outside of the basic functionality, we do more. We protect against bad behavior. So for example, we don't allow posting to an unsecure HTTP endpoint to protect users. And we polyfill missing stuff so your users get a consistent experience. So across browsers that maybe don't support features like validation messages, we polyfill that so your users are experiencing something that's consistently fast and consistently great. And I want to drive this point home, that AMP does support dynamic content, because I know that there are concerns with this in general in the community. So you can do a lot of different things with dynamic content. You can support sophisticated filtering. So for example, in this demo with the slider that lets your user pick exactly what information they want to see. Or you can implement auto-suggest or bringing in search results without a page reload, or just directly updating these pages in general with user interaction. And so a good way to see what's going on behind the scenes here is to check out our AMP Start templates, which are basically different templates for different use cases that are really easy to use and easy to customize to your needs. A few other ways to get started: you can already convert all of your blog pages on WordPress into AMP pages using the WordPress AMP plugin. And this is really easy to do. It takes just a few clicks to do the conversion. The space of WooCommerce plus AMP is still relatively new and unexplored, and so I encourage you to check out our documentation on ampproject.org, raise issues and discuss with us on GitHub, and really explore the different ways that WooCommerce and AMP can work together to create great user experiences. So I hope I've been able to convey a bit about why your mobile experience is so important and what AMP can do for that. And I really hope that you all are as excited about what AMP can do for e-commerce in the future as I am. Thank you.